the car's going left, right, and then all of a sudden we're just rolling. In my head, I hear a voice say, "You've always been looking for death. Here it is. Do you still want it?" And then boom, I'm in the air. And then all of a sudden, I see a dude in a white robe, and he's got a book in his hand, and he's walking towards me.
Warning: sensitive content. This video contains graphic descriptions of violence, trauma, and spiritual warfare. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. This content is not suitable for children.
Welcome to God's Voice today. So excited to see you again. We briefly connected a few days ago during one of my 15-minute phone calls. And by the way, if you're watching this and you have a testimony you want to share with me, you can go to godsvoiceday.com/call and you can schedule that call with me and share your testimony just like In did. And In, you had a powerful testimony. You had a near-death experience.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start because there's so many different points where we can start. So
Yeah.
You can go as far back as you want. For everyone watching, people that don't know you, what happened?
I was in a car wreck in high school, and I was ejected from the car and died and saw some things. But I kind of wanted to start off from like my childhood a little bit, if that's okay.
Perfect.
All right.
Jump right in, man.
So I was born in Chula Vista in January 26, 86 during the Super Bowl halftime. It was when the Chicago Bears versus the New England Patriots were going at it. It was like a big deal back then. It was like one of the most iconic wins in NFL history at that time. And I remember being born. I remember when I came from my mother, I could feel the sting of the air. It was like kind of like acidic. And as the nurse wraps me up and cleans me up and sets me on my mom's chest, I recalled that heartbeat. It was like home. It sounded different, you know what I mean? Because, I've been inside my mother for so long and hearing that heartbeat, but on her chest, it was like home. And so my mom had some time with me before she gave me up for adoption. And yeah, I was adopted the same day. And before she let me go, she had some time with me and she told me to come and seek her out, that she'd always be in the Chula Vista area. And after the nurse came, got me and put me to her chest, it was like a safe heartbeat, right, with the nurse as she was holding me. And as she brought me to my adopted parents, she handed me to my father. And it was like a strong heartbeat, kind of erratic, you know what I mean? And it made me really uncomfortable. I started crying. And then my adopted mother reached out, picked me up, and it was unfamiliar, but it was like gentle and loving, right? And from there on out, like I never got back to that heartbeat that was home again, right? And just to give like some context from later on, right? Like later on in my life, like when I was about like 5 or 6 years old, I was playing with my little toy trucks at the bottom of the stairs, and I could recall like that feeling of missing something, you know? And I went to my mother who was in the kitchen doing dishes, and I go, "Mom, there's like this heart in my chest. It's like I'm waiting for something to come back, but I don't think it ever will." And so my mom starts crying because she knows, she knows what that is, and I was like, "Mom, I'm sorry. What did I say?" She's like, "It's nothing," and she's upset. And so I go back and play with my toys, and, that was just a little context to that, right? So we'll go back to, I'm about a year and a half years old, right? My dad's a dentist and he wanted to do his missionary work in Peru, Machu Picchu. And at that time, there was a terrorist group called the Shining Path. If you ever get interested in it, look it up. It's really interesting. I actually just looked it up a few days ago because I was getting prepared for this interview. But there was a lot of bombing activity, killing, and it was really bad. When we went down there, the currency, the $1 was like 3 to theirs, right? While we were there, it went from $1, dude, check this out, to $550,000. So almost a half a million to like $1. It's crazy. So the currency collapsed. And what's crazy, man, is like I remember that. I remember when it got that bad. We we lived in this apartment um down the street from the ex-president of Peru, right? And below our apartment was the parking garage, right? And it was connected to the ex-president's their parking lot, right? And that window was like outside was like my TV back then, right? I was always people watching as a little kid. And I remember this one morning, I'm laying in bed, you could hear commotion, like kind of like people being loud outside. And so I went to the window and you kind of see people like it wasn't like your usual where people just walking around early morning thing. You know what I mean? My parents were still asleep. And so I went back into bed and lay with my parents. And then as the day went on, it was chaotic as heck outside. Like people were panicking, freaking out because the dollar collapsed. And there was a man, I remember, he's running with a wheelbarrow full of money. Money's falling out of the wheelbarrow. He don't even care. He's running. And I asked my mom, like, what's going on? Like, why's that guy running? And what's in the wheelbarrow? And she's like, it's money. And I'm like, well, what's he doing? And she's like, he's probably trying to buy bread and buy food for his family, you know? And so I got to witness what it was like to see economy collapse. For us, we were okay because we still had USD, right, in our bank. I forget what kind of bank they had. I talked to my dad about it, but what they would do is that whenever they needed to buy something, they'd go to this certain place, pull out some USD, then convert it to the dineros or pesos, or I forget what the currency is called in Peru. But that's how, you know, we survived. We lived pretty well off. Um, but after that happened, there ended up being a curfew. So you couldn't be out past 8 o'clock or else you'd be shot. And this is when I witnessed my first murder. And um, it was late at night. There was a man out on the road. He was holding a brown bag in his hand and he was taking drinks and he was cursing at the soldiers at the far end of the road. And my mom uh, opens up the window and she's like, "You idiot, get inside. They're gonna kill you. You don't see the soldiers over there. They're gonna kill you, you stupid, stupid man." You know, and she turns to my dad. She's like, "Blair, you have to do something. You have to do something." And he's like, "What am I gonna do? If I go out there, I'm gonna get shot. I'm gonna get killed, you know?" And so they both are like out the window yelling at this guy. And I'm just watching my parents, you know what I mean? And so they end up closing the window, close the curtain. They put me on the bed and they told me to stay away from the window. And my mom's weeping and crying. And my dad's got his arm around her and they're huddled together praying, you know, praying for this man. And while they're praying and distracted, I get off the bed and I get up there and I'm looking out the window under the curtain. And I'm just looking, you know, and I see this guy. He's cursing and yelling at him. And these soldiers, they look at each other and the guy on the right has a cigarette and he's smoking. And so they start walking unison down the street. And the guy keeps cussing and yelling at him. And the guy with the cigarette takes a puff, flicks it, and they look at him and they just lay out on the guy. Dude gets tatted up, bottle falls to the ground, guy hits his knees and just face plants. And at that point, and those guys start laughing. The soldiers laugh and walk back. And at that point, I'm screaming, you know, and my mom goes, "Oh, Jesus," and gets off the bed and grabs me and, you know, crying. And I'm not allowed to buy that window, you know, and we went to sleep that night. And when my parents were asleep, I'd get up and I'd look and that guy was still there. And I'd go lay back in bed and get up, he's still there. I get up back in bed. And I get in trouble when my once my parents got awake, but eventually two men ended up grabbing the guy and putting him along the side of the building over there. And when we'd leave the building, my mom would keep me from looking in that direction to seeing the body over there, right? So this is just an experience. This all leads up to stuff for me. After that, we ended up moving into another apartment. We were on the 24th floor, and at that time, there was like really insane terrorist attacks. If you look it up on YouTube, you'll see it. There was bombings, car bombs, and there was this one path that my dad would typically go to go do his missionary work. But this day, I don't know if he just didn't go or he went a different path. I don't recall, but if he would have went that day or went that path, he would have died in the car bomb that went off, right? And there was earthquakes and all this kind of stuff. And so in this building, it would sway back and forth, back and forth. And I remember this earthquake was so bad in the middle of the night, man. I woke up and I'm going on one side of the room and my bed's going on the other and I'm freaking out, you know?
Before we get back to the episode, if you're enjoying this interview, can you take a second to subscribe? It really helps us reach more people with these powerful stories. Thank you in advance. Now let's get back to the interview.
My mom comes in the room stumbling and she's like, we gotta go, gotta go. And I didn't have time to get shoes or anything like that. And we're going down the stairs and, you know, the elevators weren't working. There was no power. And I don't think you'd want to take the elevators anyway at that time. By the time we got to the very bottom floor, my mom lost her footing, wiped us both out. You know, we both got really hurt. And my dad had had enough of that because there was never power in that building. You know, we'd always have to take the stairs all the time. And somebody at their church said they had a house for rent. And this was like, this is where it gets wild. This is where I start to learn about the power of God, right? Um, we move into this new house, right? No more apartment. Where it's a neighborhood, but this neighborhood, give you a little story about the neighborhood. Every house has bars around the property. Everything's gated. Everybody's got some sort of thing, barbed wire on the top of the fencing, or spiky tops, or broken glass at the top, just to keep people from stealing because people would steal anything. It didn't matter what it was. Like I remember my mom was watering the yard and some guy tried to steal the hose while she was watering. Like it was that, you know, it was ghetto at that time, man. And our neighbors, man, this is the story right here. Our neighbors were witches, like hardcore. They dressed in black. I don't ever remember any men there. I just remember an older woman, and then like girls my age, like little, and like tearing up, you know, like some teenage girls. And every time they'd see us, they'd swear at us, flip us off, curse at us, hiss at us, like, you know, and I just never understood the hate. Like I was used to getting bullied because I was white and Spanish speaking, right? Like I got bullied a lot just because of the color of my skin. And but I never witnessed that kind of hate. Like there was this one incident where one of the little girls were calling to me at the side of the fence, like to come close. And I was trying to ask her, like, why do you guys hate us? You know? And she's like, "'Cause you're stupid," and, you know, just being mean, man, cruel. And she's like, "Come close." I was like, "Why?" I was like I was timid at coming close to her, you know? And so I got close, and then she reached out and scratched me in the face between the fence, and I was like, "Ah." And I ran inside and told my mom, and I mean, it was brutal, man. And, I remember asking my mom, I was like, "Why do they hate us so much? Like, why?" And it's because they don't know Jesus like we do. You know, and they don't have Jesus in their heart, you know, and I was like, I don't get it. You know, I still didn't get it until eventually after that girl scratched me in the face, you know, they're always slipping me off. Whenever we get in a vehicle and leave or go somewhere, um, I'm in the back seat. I remember I got to the point where I got tired of it and I'd start flipping them off back. And it was like a sense of acceptance when I did that. Like it was like a smile, you know what I mean? Like, and it was like a like the gap between us kind of like in my naiveness was different. You know what I mean? Like it's like you accepted me for doing that. But I think they was just trying to corrupt me. Like that's what was really going on. And so in my bedroom, in the top right hand corner, there was just a little window there that would let light into my room. And one night on a full moon, right, bright room, you know, because of the moonlight, there's this really bright light coming, like lighting up my room. And I'm like, what the heck is that? So I grabbed my chair and I put it underneath that window, and it's still too high. I'm a little kid, man, so I can't reach it. So I grab all my books, every book I could, and put it there. And I still couldn't get there. So I'm getting pillows, stuffed animals, like whatever I could to reach, so I could look out that window. And this is what's crazy, man. This is what's crazy. And I tell this story a lot to people. I'm looking out that window and there's a group of 5 women, 5 or 4, I think it was 5. And they have this fire pit directly in line with their back door. And every time they put their hands up, the fire would raise. They put their hands down and they're chanting. I don't know. I can't hear what they're chanting. But every time they put their hands up, the fire would go, woo, woo, woo. And we get higher and higher. And then at one point, they had to keep their hands up and they're chanting. And the fire is just like a raging fire, dude. I'm not making this up, man. I see a figure of a man inside of that fire made of fire. I don't see like a face, but I see a figure of a man. And then all of a sudden, the fire from the top reaches out, grabs the women, and sucks them in. And then it's just like this little fire. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm rubbing my eyes. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, I'm like looking for these ladies, and I can't see them. I'm there for a minute, and I'm telling you, it's a full moon outside, man. So it's bright, like I can see their whole backyard. There's not much out there. It's pretty empty. It's not like my backyard where I have decorations and chairs in the garden. Okay. And so I get off the thing and puzzled, and I'm laying in bed and I'm just trying to put together everything I saw. Like, did I really just see a dude in that fire? Like, not, didn't see a man or, but just a figure, a silhouette of a person. You know what I mean? And then that fire really just taking them into the fire. And because it ended up just being a dwindling fire. And I'm just there thinking, and I get up and I look again, searching and nothing. Right. And so I lay back in my bed, and fall asleep, and then I wake up. And then I just have like this urge to go check. So I get up there and I check. And all of a sudden, out of the ashes, man, it's just ones that they appear one by one. Boop, 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 boop. In unison, like robotic, dude, robotic. And they're walking in unison, walking to the door. And as the lady reaches for the doorknob to open it, they all turn and look at me. It freaked me out, man. I fell off that chair. I fell on the ground. I'm like, what the heck? I scurried to my bed. I throw the covers over my head, because I'm freaked out, man. You know, and I pulled the covers over my head and I'm looking at that window, and this darkness appears from the cracks of the window and starts spreading across the room, covering the whole room. Like the moon got covered by a cloud or something, but it wasn't like that. Like there was still moonlight, but it was just this darkness that covered the room. And then I looked at my closet and it's like it opened up a little bit, and I see these eyes peering at me, dude. And I've never witnessed anything like this as a kid. Like I've never, I'm a Christian family. We don't watch anything weird like that. Very, I'd say sheltered, but obviously I've seen a lot. You know what I mean? But nothing like this, dude. And I hop off my bed and I've never had a sense of something being under my bed. I've never been scared of something like that. It's never been a concern of mine that a monster was under my bed. And so I jump off my bed, I flick on the light, and I look and there's nothing there. And I'm like, what the heck? And I turn off the light, go lay back in my bed, and it's there again. I see these eyes looking at me, and I jump up, I turn on the light, I open up my closet, I search through my clothes, and there's nothing there. At that point, I don't turn off the light. I sit back in my bed and I call out for my parents. And I call out for them a few times until they answer me. And uh, I don't remember if it was my mom or my dad. One of them was like, "Yeah, yeah, I could sleep with them." And so I get up, I turn off the light, and then um, from my room to my parents' room, there's a bathroom right here, right? And this is two-story house, right? So there's my bedroom, bathroom, my parents' room, a spare workspace, and then I had a nanny that took care of me when my parents did missionary dental work. That's how I became really fluent in Spanish. Um, and so as I was walking past the bathroom, I saw things crawling on the bathroom floor, like like centipedes and bugs and just all over the room, the walls. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I just kind of, I'm not in the bathroom, but I kind of like lean in, turn on the light and look. Sorry. And it gone. I turn off the light, it's all there. And I'm like looking and I turn on the light and it's not there. And I'm like, what the heck, And I turn it off, and at the bottom of the at the end of the hall where the stairs go downstairs, we have a lamp that's there. And there was this shadow casting on the wall that was right there. And it was just a silhouette of a, you know, body like this, but then horns, like big horns. And I was like, what the heck, you know? And so I'm curious, man. And so I walked to the edge of the balcony, looking down because I'm trying to make sense of what is causing this shadow to go there. And so I go down the stairs a little bit, because it goes down, curves, and then you could go down again. And I'm looking and I'm just like, I can't make sense of what it is, but I get this feeling like, do not go downstairs. Like, don't go down there. And so I go up the stairs to go to my parents' room. And then all of a sudden that shadow starts moving, like it's coming up the stairs, right? It's still center and it makes no sense. You know what I mean? Like, but it's just moving, like it's getting bigger. And I panic, man. And logically, you think I just run to my parents' room, but for some reason, I ran into my bedroom, threw the covers over my head. And I'm like, Jesus, please keep me safe. Please knock me out. Jesus, please keep me safe. Please knock me out. Please keep me safe. Please knock me out. Please keep me safe. Please knock me out. And I felt something touch my leg, and then I passed out. I think, from what I understand, what touched my leg was my nanny. She woke up in the middle of the night, felt a bad presence in the house, and came into my room to pray for me. That's what I was told from my mom the next day. Because I went downstairs to tell my mom what happened last night, but she didn't want me to talk about it. But she knew what happened, and I was like, "How?" She's like, Madi, my nanny. And so that was uh, one of the encounters. This is where I had a really this is where I learned like the spirit. I mean, the power in the Word of God. Okay, my dad bought me a bike, and so I'm learning to ride a bike. And in front of these witches' house, right, they had a perfect place to get air, right, and so in front of the house, I'd hit this jump, when they weren't out front, because you want to stay away from them, and I'd hit this jump and get air. And one day she stops me, and my friend who's riding bikes, and the older lady that was there, she asked us, "Hey, who do I serve?" And I was like, "Who do I serve?" She's like, "Yes, who do you serve?" I was like, "Jesus." She's like, "Well, if you tell me next time I ask you who you serve, if you tell me you serve Lucifer, I'll give you a candy. But if you say Jesus, I'll put a curse on you." And I was like, all right. She's like, who do you serve? And I was like, well, I'm not going to say Jesus. I said, Lucifer. She's like, good job, good job. And hands me a candy. And right after that, I go immediately home and I tell my mom what happened. And she was so upset. She was angry. She snagged the candy out of my hand, threw it in the trash, and she points upstairs and says, "You go to your room and repent." And I was like, dang, like I didn't even do anything. But she wasn't mad at me. She was mad at like the whole situation. And I came downstairs and I told my mom what happened. She's like, "You do not ride your bike over there. You do not go over there." But man, I was a pretty rebellious kid, right? Like, that was that was just my thing. And so I went back. Oh, I can't leave this out. My mom says if she ever talks to me again, you say, "I rebuke you in Jesus' name," and you repeat that over and over and over. And that's when I learned the power of that, the whole power in that. And so I'm riding my bike and I do that whole thing where I'm not supposed to be there. I'm waiting till my parents aren't paying attention out there. And my dad was always doing his missionary thing at that time. And the witch asked me again. She's like, "Who do you serve?" And I said, "Well, my mommy said if you ever ask me to say I rebuke you in Jesus' name." And she said, "What did you say?" I said, "I rebuke you in Jesus' name. I rebuke you in Jesus' name. I rebuke you in Jesus' name." And she does this blood curdling scream like, "Ah! Lord," she goes, "My dark prince Lucifer, save me, save me." And she's speaking in Spanish, and she says some other things. And I kid you not, her front door opens by itself, but it's pitch black, like a black veil over the door. Like open, it's just black. And she's screaming, running like this. And she goes into the door and the door slams like the wind caught it. And I was like, oh man, I gotta tell my mom about this. And I do, and I get in a bunch of trouble. I'm grounded. I'm not allowed to ride my bike for like 2 weeks. And then finally I get to ride my bike, and my friend that lived down the street, um, I wanted to show him what would happen if I, when you do that, just her reaction, because I thought, I don't know, I'm a dumb kid, and so I'm trying to get him to come over there. He's like, no, it's a bruja, like, no, my mom tells me not to go over there. I was like, no, just come on, you know, and so she pays no mind to me, does it just is ignoring us, and she's planning something along the walk path of her home, right? Along the thing. And I go, aren't you going to ask me who I served today? And she slowly gets up and I look over to my friend and he's gone. He is pedaling going home and I see him drop his bike and he runs into his house. And I turn over and she grabs me by the arm and she points at me and she's like, "You abused the power in those words." I'm like, "Let go of me, let go of me." And she lets go and I start pedaling off. And as I'm heading to my friend's house, I'm looking behind me and I see this lady and she's going out like this. And like, dude, something supernatural happens. Something translucent, kind of bluish in color, comes out of her arm and like is flying towards me. And I stop my bike because I'm like, what the heck? And it's getting closer and closer, and it looks like a demonic hand, like hands out like this. And it's coming at me, and I fall off my bike, and I get back on it, and I go, "Ha ha, you missed!" As I'm looking back on her, and I go to pedal, and as I do, that demonic hand came back and hit me on the head, and I'm shaking. It was like electrocuting me. I'm just like, "Ugh," and I'm just shaking, dude. And I fall off my bike, and I'm just like, just shaking, curled up. And in my head, I'm like, Jesus, help me, help me. And my friend's mom, uh, who went home, she comes outside. She goes, Patricio, mijo, yeah, like what the heck? And that lady, the whole time this is happening, she's chuckling, like, just chuckling. And she says something along the lines like, I bind you or rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Get on your white horse and leave. And I plead the blood over the lamb over you, like over me, pleading the blood of the lamb over me. And she picks me up and she calls out for my mom, like, Karen, Karen. And my mom comes out. She's like, oh, Jesus, what happened? Was he hit by a car? She's like, no, you need to grab his bike, though, because my bike's in the middle of the street. And my mom's carrying the bike, but she doesn't bring it in into our fencing, into our yard, and I was concerned because everybody steals everything, right? She left it outside of our home. So I'm like, but I'm so out of it, man, that I can't say anything, And so she comes into the front of our, like inside of our home holding me. And she's like, where do I put him? Where do I set him down? And then there was a couch in the living room. So she sets me down there. And she's like, Karen, you need to call your priest to get them over here right now. You need to start a prayer chain and pray over me. And at that point, um, I start getting really violently sick, dude. I'm like, Mommy, I don't feel so good. And I start puking and puking. My mom gives me water and I can't keep anything down, dude. I'm puking, puking, puking. Eventually, a priest ends up coming to the house, blessing me, putting the holy oil over my head, praying over me. And I'm not getting better, dude. I was like that for 5 to 7 days. I really don't know because I was young, but it was a long time. It was about a week. Um, and during those days, it was torture. I saw like demonic figures. Um, Creeping up on the side of the couch or looking at me. I would start having dreams of my parents killing each other or killing me. Um, it was straight up demonic, man. I just remember it was torture. It was literally mental torture. And my mom was fasting the entire time, praying, had her Bible next to me, never left my side. So I learned the power of fasting and prayer, through my mom. Like I understand how powerful that is. I remember at one point my mom was sure I was going to die. She was sure of it, and so she made me say the Lord's Prayer, and she made sure that I said every single word. And that 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 next morning, I woke up and I see my mom, she's on the rocking chair and her head's back, mouth is open, Bible across her legs, like exhausted, man. This lady's going through spiritual warfare for the life of her son, you know? And and I'm like, mommy, I'm hungry. You know what I mean? I'm hungry. And so from that day forth, I wasn't allowed to go outside. I wasn't allowed to, do anything, And and then later we ended up moving back to California, lived in Poway for a while. And I had a good relationship with God, right? As a kid, my mom made sure of it. I mean, would make me pray and all this kind of stuff all the time. Obviously, repent for things when I did things wrong. And um, when we moved to Oregon, I was about in second grade. Um, I asked God to prove that He was real to me. I was like, God, I know that you're real, and if you don't do this, I'm not gonna not think you're real. I'm gonna believe no matter what. But if you could only let it snow in my backyard, that'd be really awesome because I know that you hear me. And a little bit later, all of a sudden, my mom calls out to me. She says, "Patrick, it's snowing." I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "It's snowing." I'm like, "Mom, I prayed for this. I prayed for this." And I ran in the backyard and it's sprinkling down snow. And our backyard, the fence was broken a little bit. So I went through it and I ran out in this empty field that's behind our house. There was no snow. I'm like, "What the heck?" And I ran back and I jumped over our fence into my neighbor's yard. And it wasn't snowing in their yard, but the snow would drift a little bit from our property into theirs a little bit. And so I went around, because I couldn't hop back over the fence. I went around their side of the house, got back into the front, and then it was snowing in our front yard. And so it wasn't snowing in the neighbor's front yard. And then I went over into the other neighbor's front yard. It wasn't snowing over there, but a little bit would drift from our yard over there. And so I went back inside, and my mom was like, "Go get a bucket so you can show your dad when he gets home." And so I got a bucket, and it filled up with snow. And I made a snowball, a nice sized snowball, and I put it in the freezer so when my dad got home, I could show him. And like I'm a kid, you know what I mean? Like it was cool, and then I'm like not interested anymore. You know what I mean? Like it happened, and I'm like not interested. And my dad came home, and I'm like, "Dad, look what Jesus gave me." You know, like look what He did for me. And it's funny because before we had this interview, I was practicing with them how what I was going to share with you today, and my dad remembers it still till this day. And and so I'm just showing you like how God has revealed Himself to me. And so there was this one day, man, I'm watching Saved by the Bell and I'm playing with my Lincoln Logs, um, and I'm pretending like on Saved by the Bell, there's a guy smoking, and so I grab my Lincoln Log and I'm pretending like I'm smoking, and I started to feel guilty, and I uh, I I I go to my room and I kneel on my bed and I pray for forgiveness, and I tell God, I'm like, God, I know one day I'm going to grow apart from you. Just don't let me get too far away. I know I'm going to grow away from you. Just please don't let me grow too far away. And nobody told me to do this. This was just like was on my own heart, you know. And this is a really important part of what my out of body experience that I get to. But this is like the important part was that prayer that I said to God. And we ended up moving to Pendleton, Oregon in third grade, and it wasn't a really great neighborhood. There was a guy at the end of the street um, uh, who took advantage of me in inappropriate ways. As I'll let people read between the lines on that, and that went on for many years. I ended up smoking marijuana in third grade. Um, it wasn't a regular thing, but a few times I'd smoked marijuana over there, and I started getting into smoking cigarettes in third grade. If I couldn't get a cigarette from that neighbor over there, I'd smoke it on cigarette butts that I found on the ground. And this kind of rebellious attitude started happening from then on out, right? Um, then leading up to my teenage years, right? I'm 14. I meet this beautiful Latina. I remember when I was at this quinceañera, man, and she walked out, dude, and it was like time slowed down, dude. It was like all I saw was her, and that's what I wanted, man. And I'm like, she's gonna be mine, dude. And it didn't happen right away. I mean, we introduced ourselves, but she was dating a buddy of mine, and then, you know, ended up dating me later on. And but it wasn't a great relationship, man. It was a really corrupt situation. Um, I ended up losing my virginity to her, but she also started fooling around with my friends on the side. So it really, I didn't understand that, man, because I just wanted to be with one girl for the rest of my life and marry her. You know what I mean? That was like my train of thought. And but and I couldn't just move on, like, like knowing that she was still messing around with my friends, like it just gave me a hardened heart and made me feel like being that kind of way was okay. Um, and so I started getting that rebellious spirit, right? And I started to learn that my parents could tell me no and ground me to my room, but they couldn't chain me to the walls. And so then I realized that it's just words. You're grounded. You can't leave. And I was like, watch me, you know? And so I started leaving home, not doing what they wanted me to do, not listening. And then eventually running away. And it's when I ran away where the worst things happened to me. I ended up staying at my buddy Tony's house. I lived under his bed for a while, for a couple weeks, until the cops came to his house searching for me, and then the mom would no longer let me be there. And I remember one late night, I went to his window so I could come over and sleep, but he's like, "Hey, you can't come here. My mom won't let you be here anymore." I was like, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" He's like, "I don't know, you know?" And so I went to the levee. There's this creek that runs there, and I slept by the river, and it was terrifying. Like there's like deer and all that kind of stuff that are out there. So at night, in the middle of the night, you'll hear things splashing through the water, and it's pitch black, man. There's no light, you know what I mean? And so when the sun finally came up, I was soaking wet. Like I didn't realize that like the dew in the morning, would soak everything up. Like it was like I took a plunge in the river, right? And so I got pneumonia. I had this like sick cough, and I went to that one guy that I was mentioning earlier, that where I smoked cigarettes, and he was diddling me, and I went there, and I just kind of told him the situation and what was going on. I just needed a little place to rest till I figured things out. And so he made me soup, got me comfortable, helped me get my clothes washed and cleaned and everything like that. And um, that night, we were hanging out, and I asked him, I was like, "Hey man, you got any beer or anything? Like get drunk?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't got any beer, but I got some wine." I was like, "Yeah, man, I'll drink some wine." So he gets me some wine and hands it to me, and there's this floaty stuff, white floaty stuff on the top. I'm like, "Dude, what is this?" He's like, "Oh, it's just to preserve the taste. You can just slurp that. Just slurp it." I'm like, "All right." And I slurp it, and it's this instant powder in my mouth, dude. Instant powder. I'm like, "Dude, what the heck is that?" He's like, "Just chug the drink. You'll get that taste out your mouth." So I just start chugging the drink. I'm like, "Dude, that's nasty. I don't want that." It's my first time drinking wine, and it was horrible, right? And so we're hanging out, and I started to get really tired. I'm getting really tired. And so we go to sleep, and I'm sleeping in his bed. I was always comfortable, I wasn't, you know, weirded out by sleeping in the same bed with somebody. But he starts to get undressed. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" He's all, "Why sleep in the nude?" And I was like, "Well, you're sleeping under the sheets then. I'll sleep above the sheets with a comforter, but you're sleeping under the sheets." And I pass out, and I wake up to this dude sucking on my ear and his hands on me, like down my pants. And I wake up, I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I thought you'd like it." I was like, "No, man, get your hands off me, dude, before I tell everybody you're freaking a weirdo." And he's like, "All right." And then I fall asleep, and I wake up again to the same thing, sucking on my ear, touching me. And I'm like, "Dude, what did I tell you?" And I elbow him in the face, just bop. And I get up, but when I get up, everything's pixelated. And I'm so out of it. I was like, "Dude, what did you do to me? Like, what the heck?" And he's like, "Dude, I was gonna give you a choice, but not anymore." And then he throws me down and starts just punching me, just brutally punching me in the face, just just beating the crap out of me. And I was shocked, dude. I was like, "What the heck, man? Like, what the heck is happening?" You know? And so I cover my face, cover myself, and then he starts trying to yank down my pants. And then I go to grab my pants, and then he starts beating me in the face again. And so it was just a battle between getting punched in the face and keeping my pants on. And I lost the battle, dude. I lost the battle, and I got thrown on my stomach, and it was painful and brutal. I'm facing the pillow, just in agony, you know. Um, and I start calling out for help, right? I start calling out for help, and he's telling me, you scream as loud as you want, because his house is kind of halfway into the ground, right? His house goes into the ground a little bit. There's a couple windows, that are above the ground, but he's all, nobody's gonna hear you, you know. And so I start praying to God. That's the only thing I got left, man, is I got God. I'm gonna pray, and so I start praying to God. God, help me, please, please help me. Bring me somebody, bring me an angel, bring me something. Like, kill him where he is. And at this point, we're kind of face to face. My legs are in the air, and he's face to face. And for some reason, there's like this red glow to him, dude. And I'm like, "You're the devil." I'm like, "You're the devil." He's like, "You're right." You know. And I end up crapping the bed. And he turns on the light, throws me off the bed, and I see his dog, and I'm trying to call his dog because I'm gonna try to the dog. And he gets his dog away. He knows what I'm trying to do, and I'm like, "Hey, come here." I tell the guy, "Come here," and he's like, "What?" I was like, "Come closer. I need to tell you something." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Come closer." And he gets closer, and he's perfectly where I wanted him, and I kicked him in the balls as hard as I could, just pop. And I heard him, and I start laughing. I'm laughing like, ha ha ha. He's like, "Oh, you think that's funny? You think that's funny?" And he grabs my legs, spreads them apart, and just stomps on me, dude. And that hurt so bad. It was excruciating pain, and I passed out. Uh, the next morning, I wake up, and I'm naked in the bed, and I'm like, "What the heck?" And I got this crazy headache, and I'm like, "What the heck, man?" And so I get up, and I'm like, "Where's my clothes?" He's like, "Oh, I'll get them for you. I washed them for you." He's like, "You washed them for me?" "Yeah, they were filthy." I was like, "All right," and I'm like, I'm still trying to gather my thoughts. You know what I mean? And I get my clothes, and I'm putting two and two together. You know what I mean? And I go to the bathroom, and I poop. And when I poop, I see um, semen, I see blood, um, and I'm like, because when I go to wipe, there's like some blood, and I'm like, "What the heck?" And I looked in the toilet, and I saw, what I saw, and I finished wiping it. And at that point, I'm like, it was real. What happened to me actually happened to me, and I'm at the sink looking in the mirror, like, what do I do? What do I do? And back then there wasn't like cell phones, man, like we have them today. Like there was no iPhone back there where I could take a picture and have some evidence. You know what I mean? Or text anybody like that. Um, and so I flushed the toilet. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, there goes the evidence. And I leave the room, and I walk out there, and this dude is on this chopping block, and he's cutting carrots. He's chopping carrots. Cop, cop, cop. And just looking at me, and like kind of like not a chill way, like angry, like, And I was like, dude, I don't remember anything last night. I don't remember nothing. And um I see him just chopping the knife, and I look over to myself, and there's all his knives right there. And I just grab a blade. I'm like, "I remember you, mother effer. I remember, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you." And he puts his knife down and just starts walking to me. And I'm swinging this knife, dude. I'm swinging it. And um, he, as I'm swinging out like this, he grabs my arm, twirls me around, hovers me over the sink, and puts the knife to my throat. And he's like, "You think you're the first one I've ever done this to? You're not. I got other kids in barrels." And I have a friend who's a judge who also does this with me. So there's nothing that you can do. No one's going to believe you. And if I slit your throat right here, nobody's ever going to find your body. And I was just like, oh, like I was just like, damn, dang. And he's like, "You're going to calm down." And I'm like, like I'm checkmate, man. You got me. Like, there's nothing I can do, you know? And I'm like, yeah. And so he puts the knife down, and as he walks away, I go try to grab the knife, and he slams my hand down and tells me to go sit at the table. And I go sit at the table, and I'm like, you know, I don't know what this is. I don't know if I'm kidnapped at this point. I don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? We're sitting at the table. He hands me a bowl of food, a stew that he made, and pretty much he's just telling me. I was like, "So what? Do I get to go home? Like, can I call my mom?" And uh, he's like, "Are you gonna tell anybody?" I was like, "No." He's all, "Because if you do, I'm gonna kill your parents." And I'm like, and I call my mom, and he's standing right there with me while I'm doing it. And I'm like, "Hey, because I've been running away. I was like, I'm at Arts. He's gonna bring me home." And then he starts talking to her. And so the drive to as he's taking me home is just silent. I'm like mad. And as we get out the car and I get out, he's like, "You remember what I said?" I slammed the door on him and I'm flipping him off. As I get in the house and my parents aren't there, nobody's home. And I go straight to the bathroom and I hop in the shower and I just could not get clean, dude. I couldn't scrub myself as much as I wanted and I couldn't get clean. It was beyond skin deep, dude. The filth that I felt. And at that point, after that, I didn't feel like a man anymore. I felt like my manhood had been robbed from me. And I remember after I got out of that shower, I just looked in the mirror and I just started bad mouthing myself. Like I'm weak, I'm pathetic. And that went on for so long, dude. It went on for so long. And this plays a big part of what leads to my NDE experience. Because I was on the path of I didn't want to commit suicide, dude. Like I just couldn't do it. I tried, dude. I tried to hang myself, couldn't do it. I tried to take my dad's gun, couldn't do it, man. I just couldn't do it. I got into cutting myself. I would often cut my wrists. I'd cut my legs. And then I started looking for ways to get lost in drugs. So anybody that you know I knew of, I'd try to go down that route and just to lose it. And I still couldn't escape it. I stopped talking to all my friends and my girlfriends for a long period until my girlfriend just showed up to my house, and I was still dating Kim at that time. And she's like, "What's going on? What's wrong with? Why aren't you answering my calls?" And I just couldn't tell anybody, man. I was ashamed. I felt like I did this. I felt, it was embarrassing, you know. And I just held her and I just started weeping, and I hadn't had a chance to cry like that with anybody. And so from that point on, I ended up going into freshman year, and um, I started selling pot, and I was like the guy that people would. I was selling pot before that, to be honest. I was selling pot in middle school. My friend's older brother sold pot, and he gave me a pager, and so whenever I got called on a pager, I get a ring, and I call the number, and then I go out and meet people and all that. And then in high school, I was just the weed guy. People would give me pot, and then I go share it with other people, and then they give me their money, and I'd go do that. And I this one particular day, um, a couple of days before, this one particular day was the week of Thanksgiving. Um, we only had one day of school that day. It was just on Monday, and then we had the week of Thanksgiving off. And um, prior to that day, my girlfriend at the time called me and had a horrible dream that I died in a car wreck. And I was like, "Hey, baby, don't worry about that. It's just a dream, dude." And then on that Monday of school, I woke up and I woke up and it was weird, man, because like I woke up well energized. Like I had a good sleep, you know. I remember putting my feet down and I had a wood floor, but I had a little carpet that was at the edge of my bed. And like I just remember like I could feel the fibers of, you know, that little carpet in my feet, you know. And I could smell the bacon that my mom's cooking in the kitchen. And I open the door and I say, "Hey, mom," and she just looks like something's really troubling her. You know, she just got that. I know that look. You know, you everybody knows their mother's look. You know, and I was like, "I love you," you know, and I go and brush my teeth, and I'm brushing my teeth, and everything's just it's just a great day, man. It's I don't know, it was great, you know, and I we had a garage that was like my area. I had a big screen TV in there, a pool table in there. It was like my chill spot for me and my friends. And my cousins who are really popular, they're called POD, Payable on Death. They're well known in California. They're a band, and they came out with this song, Satellite. And the song is all about pretty much not having a chance to say goodbye before you die, right? And it was on MTV, and I was like, oh man, this song is dope. I like this is so great, you know. And I was loving it, you know. And then I went to VH1, and then VH1 was playing the same song again, you know. And I was like, dude, yeah, you know. And by that time, it was time for me to go to school. My friends from up the street came over, and my dad would drop us off at school. And when we got in the truck, there was again that song played again on the radio. Um, and I'm sure there's listeners that will know who are big POD fans will know the song I'm talking about. I think it's called Satellite. Um, Yeah, I know it's a satellite record. So, anyways, we get to school, and I decide this day I'm not going to skip. I'm not going to skip because it's only one day out of the week. You know what I mean? I'm not going to skip all my classes. I'm just going to enjoy it. And somebody gave me some really good pot to smoke. And I'm like, I'm going to say this for my friends, you know, because it was a sample thing, right? And on lunchtime, I meet up with my best friends, Tyler, Sergio, Jose, and I meet up with them. I'm like, hey, let's go smoke. You know, let's go somewhere. They're like, nah, I'm not going anywhere today. I was like, why? And one of my friends, he said that his mom was telling him to be extra safe that day. I was like, what? And then my other friend, his girlfriend, was telling him she had a bad feeling about that day. And I was like, dude, that's crazy. Because you know what? Both my mom and my girlfriend both had that same feeling, you know? And at that point, um, our friend Victor pulls up in the driveway, and our homie Tim McMurphy is in the back, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And they're all loaded, you know. I was like, "Come on, let's go," and they're like, "Nah, nah." And I was always really convincing with my friends. Like I had a silver tongue, dude. I was able to just talk people into things that they didn't want to do, and so we ended up getting them all to finally go with me, and we all got in the car. And even though there wasn't room for all of us, um, we all piled in that thing. And at one point, I was like, "Well, Tyler, why don't you just go in the trunk? You know, you'll go in the trunk and we'll go." He's like, "Heck no." He's like, "Why don't you go in the trunk?" And I was like, "Dude, last time I went in the trunk, I almost passed out. So no, I'm not going in the trunk." You know. Um, and so we all pile in the car and we go on the back roads on Fulton Road. There's these back roads that are out there, and we all pull over and we're smoking. And when we're all done, Victor looks back at me and he says, "Pat, are you ready to die?" And I was like, "What?" And then he just like puts the gas to the metal, dude. And we're on the back road, so we're kind of like peel out a little bit, and we go, and then we get on a paved road, and we're just hauling. And I remember looking at the speedometer, and I don't remember if it was 120 or 130 miles per hour, but it was past that and just shaking. You know, it was past that and shaking. And I was like, dude. And um, everybody was uncomfortable, dude. The power lines, they were like, I ain't never seen them go by that fast. You know, just woof, woof, woof. You know, there's space between them power lines, man. You know, so they're just zooming past. And I I'm like, uh, Oh, I put on. I tell my buddy Tyler, I'm like, hey man, scoot over, dude. And he scoots over, and I put on my seatbelt. And I put on my seatbelt, and then it starts a chain reaction, and everybody else starts buckling up. And then my best friend that I just took his seatbelt, he's like, oh, freak, and I'm like, dang it. Unbuckle. I'm like, hey, bro, switch response. He's like, why? Just switch response. And then I grabbed the seatbelt, and I just remember thinking, I'm going to die, and I buckle him in, and I turn around because I gotta stop the car. And I turn around, and my buddy Tyler throws his arms around me, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He's all, bro, we're gonna crash. We're gonna crash, bro. I won't let go. I promise. I got you. I got you. I was like, bro, I gotta stop the car. He's like, no, bro, I got you. I won't let go. I was like, bro, if you don't let go, I'm gonna throw elbows and it's gonna hurt. Let go. He's like, no, bro. I was like, bro, I'm gonna count to three. And so I count to three, and I just start digging elbows into him. I'm just like, God, 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 God. And I mean, I'm hurting him, dude. And he lets go. I'm like, Victor, you got to stop the car, man. You got everybody freaked out, you know? And he slams on the brakes, and I freaking hit the CD deck, and I fling, and I hurt myself. And then everybody Sergio starts laughing like, you know? And he's all, then get out. And he's like serious. He doesn't look at me. He's just looking straight. He's like, then get out, you know? And I'm like, I'm getting out. And for some reason, like in my mind, like I could just see me getting out, and I'm just having this story in my head of like either I'm like way far away from the school, and I didn't want to walk, or I just had this vision of him turning around and just running me over. And so I'm like, no. And then he's all, then shut up, and he takes off. We're hauling again down this road. And at this point, I'm like, dude, I'm going to have to reach for the keys and just turn it off. And I'm like, dude, and I have my arm on his seat like this. And um, I'm like, Victor, you got to stop the car. Everybody's freaked out. This is dumb. And all of a sudden, you see a sign, and it's a cross, right? And it's for all common traffic. And then it says pavement ends, and it's like the cross, and then life ends. You know what I mean? It was like so symbolic, to me when I see that. And it goes uphill, and then it goes down, and it's just turns into gravel. Pavement ends, and it's just gravel. And we go off of that like Dukes of Hazard, right? Just phew. But it ain't all cool and fancy, dude. It nosedives, and we bonk. We hit so hard, and I almost flew out the front window, but my hand was like glued to his seat, and my whole body hits the roof of the car, and I'm going forward, and I just remember I throw my hand back, and I grab the other seat, and I'm screaming, ah, you know, and I grab the seat, and the car's going left, right, and then all of a sudden we're just rolling, and when we're rolling like this, I'm floating, I'm floating in the car, and I'm looking around, and I see everybody like, uh, Jose's got his eyes closed, and he's holding on to the thingy thing, and all tensed up, and Murph is behind me, face closed, and everybody's just tensed up, and I'm just like looking around. I'm just floating, and it's silent, dead silent. You don't hear a thing, and all of a sudden it's like, ting 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 ting, like things are just like a rocket ship is taking off, and I start hitting everything in the car, and my friend's legs are hitting me. My buddy Tim McMurphy, he only has the waist seatbelt, so his head and his body is just like, it's like I'm being jumped, like gang jumped. And at one point, I'm like, I gotta get my body between their legs, to keep myself safe. So I'm trying to get myself between their legs, and as I do, I come out and I go right up and I hit the ceiling, hit the ground. I go king, 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 and I fracture my back. And I try to get back in between the legs, and then again I go kink, 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 and I mess up my back even more, and then I hit the passenger back door, and my buddy's like right here, and I'm just looking out the window as we're rolling, and then I smack and I hit that window. Surprised I didn't go through it, and in my head I hear a voice say, "You've always been looking for death. Here it is. Do you still want it?" And I'm looking and I see the wheat, the grass, the wheat, the sky, the wheat, the ground, the wheat, the sky, the wheat, the ground, the wheat, the sky, the wheat, the ground, the wheat, the sky. And I push my body. I have my hand underneath the window and my hand on the roof, and I'm pushing, and I'm like this, just holding myself out. And I'm like, what do I do now? Like, what do I do now? And all of a sudden, I just bash through that window, and now my legs are on the roof of the inside of the car. My body's on top of the car like this, and I'm stuck, dude. I'm pinned, you know. And as the car is rolling, I'm luckily every time it would have rolled on my body, the car bounces, so it's missing rolling on my body. And at one point, um, my my head is being dragged in the gravel, and I can hear the rocks and all that just going across my ear, and like it's just digging in there. And the car lands on my head, and there's in the gravel, it's just squeezing my face, and it feels like my head's gonna pop out like a pimple. And so I'm like, oh, just like tensing up my jaw, like, oh, and I just feel it like double bounce, and then boom, I'm in the air, and I just hear wind, and I'm flapping everywhere, and I'm like, what the heck? And I'm trying to center myself, and I'm way up in the air, dude. I got ejected from the car, and I'm looking, and I can see the car moving like this, and I'm about to land in front of it, and in my head, I see a cat, like in my head, a visual. I see a cat falling to the ground, and right as they touch the ground, they push off. Right? I must have saw that on Sesame Street or something. I don't know, but that's what I saw, and that's when I got the idea. I was like, oh, before I land, I need to make sure that I time it, because if I fall on my butt, I'm gonna be paralyzed. Like I just knew that if I didn't tense up quick enough, like I would end up messed up, and and I knew I had to move out of the way of this car or it was gonna hit me. And so I'm paying attention to this car, and I'm sideways. I'm not like front of it. I'm like sideways. And I'm like trying to time in. I'm looking down. And then all of a sudden, something moves me out of the way, and it threw me off because I'm trying to prepare like this whole scenario I thought up. And it moves me out of the way of the car. And I'm like, oh, I got to tense up. And I tensed up. And when I tensed up too early, and I put a softball, like my hip busted through my hip bone, and I put a softball size hole in my hip bone. And you could hear it. It sounded like a grand slam, like, oh, like you just hit a baseball really hard. And then I bounced forward, and I rolled, and the car uh, slides right next to me. And I roll on my side, and there's just all this dust just going over me. and and at this point, I'm like, oh crap. And I turn around, I'm on my back, and I kind of glance down a little bit, but I don't take like a good look, because I'm scared that if I look down, I'm going to be cut in half, because it all happens so fast, man. You don't know what to think, man. You know what I mean? It's just so surreal. And so I touch my body, to make sure that my lower half is there. And I'm like, all right. And so I take the gutsy, I look down, and I'm like, okay, it's all still there. And so I look again. I wiggle my right foot, it works. I wiggle my left foot, it ain't working. I'm like, okay, there's some internal stuff going on there. And then I could feel my ribs poking into my lung. And so I'm taking shallow breaths, right? I'm like, and all of a sudden, man, I have no control of this reaction. I start insanely laughing. Like I can't laugh like that. I've never been able to recreate that laugh, but it's like an insane laugh of like, I made it. I can't wait to tell this story that I survived this, you know? And all of a sudden it's like the air got knocked out of me. When you get the air knocked out of you, you breathe, and like if you remain calm, you just keep breathing, you get that sensation of, oh, I got a good breath, right? And so I'm like, I'm keeping that in mind because I went through a phase of where I like to fight and do stupid stuff. So been beat up plenty of times to know what that feels like. And so I'm like taking deep breaths. And I'm like, at first, I told you I was taking shallow breaths because of that puncture. but I could no longer feel that puncture. I'm more worried about not being able to breathe. And I feel this coldness come over the tips of my toes, comes down my feet, up to my knees. And at this point, I'm kind of freaking out and I'm breathing quicker. I'm like, and I could feel it coming up my chest and then, and at that last breath, I'm like looking at myself and my eyes are wide open. My mouth is, and I'm just like, what the heck? And I'm floating above myself. And I look at the car, like I'm just flat and I have no control of me floating up. And I look at the far left and it's like being in the plane, man. You can see everything. And I'm looking left and I look right. I'm like, what the heck? And then I just stared at myself and I kept my eyes on my own eyes as I'm passing up further and further and I'm getting smaller and smaller. And I start to pass through a cloud and then I'm like in all white, like when you're in a cloud, when you're in a plane, you're flying somewhere, it's all white around you. And so I'm waiting to get through to the other side of the cloud and to go out to the edge of the cosmos and become a star or, I don't know, man, that's just kind of where my thoughts are at, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden I'm just there and I've been there for a minute, and I'm like, what the heck? And so I I look down and I point my feet down, because like there's no ground. And so I'm like put my feet down and I'm like just like trying to move, And I'm like, what the heck? And I remember I lifted my legs up high to see if I could feel a sensation of falling. And I remember falling up backwards to see if I would feel a sensation of anything, you know what I mean? And there was nothing. And so I'll go, hello, hello, is anybody there? Hello. And all of a sudden in the distance over here, I have like eagle hawk vision, man. I have really good vision all of a sudden. I see a dude in a white robe and he's got a book in his hand and he's walking towards me. He's got no body hair, looking like Mr. Clean, just walking towards me. And it freaked me out, man. It freaked me out. Like I went from being really brave of like, is anybody there to like, I need to get away from this. And so I look to the right of me and there he is. He's walking right towards me. I'm like, what the heck? I look back over there and there he is, and then I look forward and there he is. I'm like, what the heck? And so I look down between my feet because I don't know, I didn't want to see this guy coming at me. I was terrified, dude. And I look down between my feet and there he is. He's walking straight at me. So he's in the center of all my vision, and so I look forward and I closed my eyes and I could see him through my eyelids walking to me. And so I put my hands over my eyes and I could see through my eyes and my hands. Like I cannot not see this guy, dude. And so I'm panicking, dude. And I know I look silly and goofy, dude, because at this point, only thing I can do is I'm trying to run backwards, dude. I'm running backwards, and I'm panicking. And this guy comes up to me and I fall back. I just like, I'm like, you know, goofy, man, goofy. And he said, don't be afraid that you're not dead, you're not alive, but you're here because God has something to show you because of a prayer you said when you were a kid. And that was the prayer I told you about when I was smoking the Lincoln Logs. And I said, God, I know one day I'm going to get too far away from you. Don't let me get too far. And so that's why I started sharing my story with you with everything that I shared, And I knew exactly what he meant. And I'm like, good, man, I can't be dead because I got a wife and kids at home. I got a girlfriend on the side. He said, be silent. Don't speak as a fool. And like with like daddy authority, you know what I mean? And I was just like, oh, shoot. And he says, you are seeing a girl named Kim. You do have best friends named so and so and so and so. And I was like, oh, dude, this guy knows a lot about me, you know? And like, so here's the thing, man. Like, as I get into the story, there was so much that happened. I was there for a long time, dude. I was there for a long time, but some of the alignment of how everything happens, right, kind of gets fuzzy, right? Um, I asked him, I was like, so are you an angel? And he says, yeah, that's one of the many names we're known as, but yes. I was like, well, I thought angels had wings. And he goes, we do, but they're there when we need them. I was like, well, can I see? He's like, yeah. And so he steps, away from me a little bit. And then these wings appear from him behind like this. And they're not bright light, but it's like they're so white and like glowy, and then they come out and then they just open up, dude. They're just woof, they're big, and I'm just like looking at them like jaw, like my eyes were just wide open and my jaw is just, and I was like I just saw a unicorn or I just found like a mountain of gold. You know what I mean? I was just in awe, and I'm like, dude, I cannot wait to tell everybody I saw an angel, man. Like I was excited. I was just like in awe, and I know he felt good with my reaction. I mean, that'd be a good ego boost. I don't know, and and you know, uh, we end up in conversation. There was a lot said. Some of the stuff I was told, some of the conversation that I was told there was going to be taken from me, and that God would reveal it to me when the time comes. Like so, some of the things that I saw there, um, I won't know until whatever that time is. Okay, so I'm trying. Like this is where it kind of gets kind of patchy for me. Um, there was a one point when we talked about sex and how there's no sex in heaven. And I was like, "What do you mean there's no sex in heaven?" He's like, "Well, look." I was like, "Look." And so I look down my pants and I freak out, man. I'm like, "What the heck? What the heck?" I didn't have my junk wasn't there. My private parts weren't there. I was a Ken doll, man. And I'm like really looking and I'm freaking out. And this angel's laughing at me because he's like, "You all act the same. You guys all your reaction is all the same." I'm like, "What the heck? What the heck?" I'm like, "That's messed up," And and so there was another moment too, where he's like asking me about something, and I'm like, "I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't know what the answer is to that." He's like, "You do." He's all, "Just think on it." I'm like, "Okay, how am I gonna think on something I don't know? Like, I don't know the answer. How am I gonna think on it?" He's all, "Try it." And when I tried to think of this thing, it's like I had all the answers. Like I knew, like it's like I just was expanded to all knowledge. It was so unreal. It was just like, whoa. And then we went about how there were some things that God wanted to show me, and how how I'm only there to listen and observe, but nobody can hear me, feel me, or see me. I'm just there to observe and listen. I'm like, okay. And so in the whiteness, an opening happened, and we're in the sky, and like we're passing down above this neighborhood of Mackay area. And there's my best friend's house. I'm like, oh, that's my best friend's house right there. And like I'm realizing where I am. I'm like, oh, that's Jake Calvert's house over there. And now we're street level floating down. I'm like, that's my house over there. And as we're passing, going straight to my parents' bedroom, we're going to the wall, and I'm like, oh, because man, passing through a wall is not something I'd ever done in my life. You know what I mean? So I'm like, my reaction is like, oh, you know, and then like we're in the room, and he's like, listen, and um, there was a moment, man, I meant to share in my testimony at first about where my mom caught me smoking weed in the house, and I ended up calling her names and I pushed her down. And I didn't mean to push her down. I just meant to push her out of my, cause she was in my face yelling at me. And, I pushed her down and I apologized, and she went to her room and cried. And that's when like the last part of my heart that was ice cold, like fell apart. Right. And so that was what God was showing me, is like the altercation afterwards of what happened after my mom shut the door. And so my mom's praying to God, asking God, like, what is going wrong with my son? God, please, like, reveal it to me. Show me, like, where did I go wrong? What is going on with my son? Because she don't know about me being raped. She don't know all the stuff that's going on in my life. She just knows that all of a sudden I'm a cruel person that is abusive to my family, verbally, physically, you know, and she just couldn't understand. And God allowed me to feel what the sorrow and everything that she was feeling, it was really overwhelming. And I'm like, "Mom," and "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." And the angel's like reminding me, "She can't hear you. Just here to listen and observe." And I climb up on the bed, and like I'm kind of like falling through into her a little bit, so I'm kind of holding myself up, and I'm like, I'm holding my mom. I'm like, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," you know? And then when I open my eyes, I'm back in the white light, that white space. And the angel was like, "See, I do care. I do care what I'm doing to others, you know? It matters what I put people through, you know?" And um and I was just like I'm processing, everything I'm seeing, I'm wiping tears from my eyes because it was a lot, I never wanted to hurt my mom like that. I hated her when at a point, but I hated her for no reason, man. Like I hated her because of my own pain, not because she's trying to protect me and all that, And then the angel says to me, "I got one more thing to show you, but I'm going to prepare you for this." And I'm like, "Okay, um, I'm ready." Like, he's all, "You need to know that God was always with you." I'm like, "Okay." And then we just appear into this room, and it's that house that I was assaulted in. And I'm like, "Oh, no way, dude. I am not doing this. No, I'm not doing this." He's like, "You need to." I'm like, "I'm not." And he's to the right of me. I'm like, "I'm not doing this. I'm not going into that room." I'm like, "There is nothing." And I turn to my left, "You can do," and he's gone. And I don't remember if his name was Gabriel or what. I'm like calling out his name. I can't remember what his name was, the angel's name. Um, but I'm calling out for him. And I'm like, I'm not going. I'm not going into that room. So I make my way through the kitchen into the living room and I sit down on the couch. I'm like, I will sit here forever until you take me out of here because I am not going into that room. And like their room, dude, starts to unicorn, like starts to like smush, and it's like pushing me towards that bedroom door, and I'm like fighting it, but I can't, And then all of a sudden, as I come close to the corner of the door, and I could see, and it's daylight, right, and I just see him going to town on my body, and I run in there and I start swinging on the guy, but my hands are just going through him like a ghost, and I'm just swinging and I'm just swinging. I'm like, this is messed up. And I could just see myself like asleep, um, with this guy going to town. And I'm like, what? This is cruel. This is cruel. Why would you show me this? This is so messed up. And I'm trying to figure out how to stop this man from doing it. And and I look around and he's got this wall full of books, right? It's all these books. And there's one book that's glowing outside of all the other books. And so I run up to it and it's like glowing, like lights emanating from the edges, And I'm like trying to grab it. I'm desperate, dude. I'm desperate. So I'm just clinging at it, just clawing at it, looking behind me, clawing at it, clawing at it. And so at the peak of my frustration, the book falls down. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not supposed to be able to mess with anything here, but whatever that was worked, So when the Bible falls off the shelf and hits the ground, um, the guy uh, stops and looks behind him, and looks my direction. Like I see him look back my direction, and so I fall to my knees in front of this Bible, right? And I'm trying to open it, like I'm trying to do whatever I just did, right? And I'm getting frustrated and I'm just crawling, like clawing at it. And at the peak of my frustration of trying to move this Bible, the Bible opens up. And I'm like, "Oh," I'm like, "I get it. I get it." It's like the peak of my frustration is what it is. And so I stand up and I just get all this energy and I scream his name, "Art!" And he hops up off the bed, walks up to me like naked, and he looks down at the Bible. And so between me is the Bible and him. And then he leaves the room. And I fall to my knees and I start crying, dude. I start crying. And I open up my eyes and it's the angel telling me, you see, God was always with you. There's rules to all this. There's rules that God can't just give a guy a heart attack and do certain things. There's rules, but you see, God was always with you. And I'm crying and he picks me up and we're looking at each other, as he's crying with me. And I he embraces me and I have my head on his like chest area and I'm just crying, dude. I'm just crying. And Um, it was man, it was an emotional moment, and it was also really sentimental that this angel sympathized with me. You know what I mean? That he cared about me. You know what I mean? And he's like, "Yeah, there's some people that want to meet you, that want to see you." And then behind him, I see the gates of heaven, and it's tall and narrow, dude. It's like it's so freaking tall and so big that though it's narrow, it's not like narrow, Like it's super tall and narrow. It's and the people that are coming out of the gates as they're opening, the sea of people that are coming out are so tiny, like little ants compared to how big this gate is. You know what I mean? And I see this lady with her hands out, smiling, reaching out to me, and I'm like, "Grandma?" And she was young. All of them were young. I was like, "Grandma?" And she's like, "Baby." And I was like, and I ran up to her. It was my dad's mom. She was a well-known pianist in Portland, and I had a really special connection with her, man. As a kid, I didn't have any grandparents, because we lived in Peru and all that, and then we lived in California, so we were really far away from her. She lived in Portland, so when we finally moved to Oregon, she was my everything, and when we'd go to her house during holidays and stuff, we'd play that song, ding 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 ding, that piano song, and so I just have always had a really close relationship to her, and she passed away when I was young, but I ran up to her and I hugged her, and it was just I was like, "I miss you so much. I missed you so much." And there's like relatives that are there that I didn't know, and like I didn't really recognize anybody else. She was the only one that I recognized. There were people from my biological side of the family, like Hispanics and stuff like that, that I've never met that I got introduced to. Like she was like the spokesman for everybody, right? Like introducing me to everybody. And I met my mom's cousin Tony. She used to talk about him when I was a little kid. Always wished I could meet him, but he died young from a hunting accident. He got shot in the stomach from a gun that jammed, and then it went off, and he passed away that way. And so it was yeah, man, it was awesome. Um, it was really awesome getting to meet everybody. It was surreal. It was magical. Um, and then all of a sudden, it was like this mood changed, right? This mood changed, and um, my grandmother says to me, "He's like, you need to be brave. You need to be strong, okay? But you need to be brave." I'm like, "Okay." And then all of a sudden, I noticed this man, um, like the angel, but different. He was in a black robe, and he had it over his head like a hoodie in a black robe. And he walks up, and he's talking to Gabriel or this angel or whatever. He's talking to him, and then I'm like, all of a sudden, space starts to happen between me and my family. We're all separated. Angel's here, group of families here, and then it's me by myself. And he's like hunched over and he's looking at all my family members like this, And then he looks at me and I'm like, at this point, dude, it felt like my heart was in my throat. I was so scared. And he's talking to me in my head. And he's in my head, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, I gotta start think." I'm like, I gotta keep him from seeing my thoughts. So I'm like trying to envision me building blocks, like building a block wall in my head, And he's like mocking me and all this stuff, And he starts offering me things. He's like, "If you join us, you can come out of this car accident like a genius. Anything you see, you'll be able to do. You'll be able to play basketball." And I always sucked at basketball. I sucked at it. Dribbling and all that, and I could come out of this a famous rapper. Like anything I see, I can be good at, you know, and um, they start like showing me it like visually. I could see myself wealthy. I could see myself with women. I could see all this stuff, and they're telling me about how I can get revenge on all the people that look back on, like down on me, you know, and how great that would be to just flaunt how successful and how smart and how great I am. And then all of a sudden, I'm in this bed And I get up out of this bed, and it's like a fancy, luxurious room, dude. It's so fancy. And I get up, and there's this chair, and there's this bathrobe on it, and I put on this bathrobe, and there's this balcony, and I open up the balcony, and it's beautiful, clear skies, and the weather's just nice. Sun's shining on me, and I'm looking out over my property, and I'm just like, dang, and like God gave me like a third person perspective of myself, right? Like I saw myself with like a demonic smile, and like just I looked demonic, dude. And like I pulled out of it. I'm like, I'll never join you. Never, I'll never join you. And that's when like this yellow orb surrounded me. Like a yellow smoky orb surrounded me. And then this high-pitched ringing started to happen. And it got louder and louder and louder. It was getting so bad, man. And I look at the angel like, help me, help me. And he's all, you know who to call for. And I look over at my family, like my groups of family, and they're like, you know who to call for, you know who to call for. And I, last time I called for God to help me, when I was being raped, he wasn't there. You know what I mean? He didn't show up to save the day. He didn't bring anybody to rescue me. And so I was really rebellious against it. And it got so loud and so powerful that I dropped to my knees, and then eventually laying on my stomach, reaching out to my family, and they say, you know who to call for. And at that point, I just screamed out, Jesus. And it's like, it sounded like glass shattering. And all my relatives, they all rushed to me. They all picked me up, and it's like a prayer circle is the best way to describe it. They all came around me. They all put their hands on me, and they started praying. And I start glowing, right? I start glowing with light, kind of like in the animated show Hercules. When he becomes a god and he glows, it was like that. Like I was glowing, and shortly after that, everybody is proud of me, gives me hugs and loves, and it's time for everybody to go. And as I'm walking with my grandmother to the gate door, you know, um, I see homes, man. I see grass. It looks like another earth, you know. And up on this hill, there's a bunch of little kids and this tree, and there's Jesus with these kids, And I didn't want to look too much because I felt like I need to earn that ability to look upon him. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and um I said goodbye to everybody, and there was this man at the front of the gates um of heaven, and he was different than everybody else. This guy was aged. He had a beard, but there was like black, gray, and white hair, so he was aged. And he's like, "We got to hurry. We got to go." So I got the angel on my left, I got him on my right, and so as we're walking away from the gates, I'm like, "Hey, so is hell real?" And he's like, "Yes." I was like, "Well, aren't you gonna ask me if I want to see that?" And then we all stopped, and they're like, "Well, do you want to see hell?" And I was like, "Nah, no, no, I don't." And then I was like, "Are all my friends okay?" They're like, "Yeah, everything's okay." It's like, "You're gonna feel really disoriented when you get back." I'm like, "Okay." And then woof, I'm back in my body. And when I'm back in my body, these other two angels, they weren't in robes. They look like Mr. Clean, man. That's the best way I could describe them. Like a t-shirt, tucked in t-shirt and white pants. And both of them got me by the arms. They're pulling me out into the field. And I'm just like being dragged. And I'm like, whoa, like disoriented. And as they pull me way out in the field, they set me down. And I got my head back, and I'm looking back at them. And the angel on my right, he looks at me and he gives me the peace sign and then disappears. And I always thought that was cool, man. I don't know. I just think that just shows a lot about personality. You know what I mean? And then I'm like laying there, and I'm just totally disoriented, and I feel almost like I'm drunk, and I'm just like flopping everywhere, and I'm so far from the car, and I'm like, I gotta get to the car, you know? And so I'm crawling, you know, to try to get to the car. I'm crawling. And eventually I'm like, dude, this is too slow, you know? And so I'm laying on my side and I'm like using one leg, you know, dragging my other leg behind me. And then I try to stand up and I fall over and I get up and I fall over face plant. And again, I try to get up. And at one point I finally get up and then I'm like hopping as I'm dragging. And I get this idea that I'm going to try to put all my weight on that one leg that wasn't working, you know? And so I get it underneath me, and then I go to put my weight on it, and I fall backwards, and my leg is like right here to my face, and my private parts hurt so bad. I screamed in pain, and I looked down, and your leg is not your hip and all that. It was just messed up, man. You're not supposed to be like that. Your leg is not supposed to be in that kind of position, you know. And I'm screaming in pain, and I look up in the sky, and I said, I thought you said they weren't dead, you know? And that as soon as I say that, uh, you can hear noises coming from the car in the distance. And one of the guys comes out of the back window that was busted out. And another one is crawling because the car is on its side. One of the guys opens the door, right? And as he goes to come out, the door almost hits him on the head, but he catches it. And so he lets it shut and then he just crawls out the window and hops down. And then and then Tim McMurphy, you see him just slam the door open and he goes to climb out. And then that day, I'm watching the door slowly come back down and just pops him in the head. And you can just hear him go kick, 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 just like fall all the way back down because the door hit him on the head. And I'm like cracking up, dude, because it was hilarious to see. And um, Tyler, oh, was it? I think it was Tyler that went out the back window actually. And then Sergio came out, I think the front window, and Victor hopped out, and they're all by the car, and they're like, "Where's Pat? Where's Pat?" And he's like, Tyler picks up my shoe that was right next to the car. You know, he's like, "Here's his shoe, but where's Pat?" And the car's smoking, right? And one of them goes, "The car's gonna blow! The car's gonna blow!" So they all run, and then they all dive, dude. Like the car was gonna have like this, you know, too much TV, man. You know, like it was gonna explode. And I'm just laughing because these guys just look like idiots, and I'm way out here. You know what I mean? It was so funny. And and they get up, you know, and my buddy Tyler's calling for me. I love that man. And and I'm like, I'm over here. I'm over here. And he's the first one to me. He's running to me. As soon as he gets to me, his eyes get big and it takes a few steps back. And when I asked him what I looked like, he's like, dude, there was no color in your eyes. Your eyes were pure white and there was just the black pupil. Like I have, you know, hazel eyes, you know. And so to be pure white and no color, you know, sounds like you're dead. Um, and so everybody comes to me and I'm like I was like, you guys got to fix my leg, man. You guys got to fix my leg. I can't handle it looking at it because I was pushing it away, you know. And they started trying to move it, but it hurts so bad. And Tyler's like, don't touch him. You're not supposed to touch him. You're not supposed to touch him. And I'm like, dude, I don't care. I don't want my leg right here, you know. And so one of them rolled up a coat or something because I asked them to give me something to chew on while they moved my leg, and they put it in my mouth, and I'm chewing on it as they straighten it. I'm like, okay, 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 that's good, that's good, that's good. You know, I'm like, you know, and I mean, it wasn't straight, you know, it was still all mangled, you know, up, you know, but at least it wasn't like right next to me, which really bothered me. And they're all wondering on what to do, you know, what do we do? And I'm like, there's a house behind them, and I'm still I still have that energy from when I was in heaven when they all prayed over me, right? I'm still very aware, and I'm like guiding everybody on what to do. And I'm like, there's a house behind you guys. One of you guys need to go to that house over there and have them call 911. And they're like arguing on who does it. You know, I'm like, Tyler, you go to that house. He's like, me? I was like, yeah, dude, I'm dying here, man. you know? And he's like, and so he starts running and then he starts walking. And I'm like, dude, start running. And everybody's yelling at him, like, dude, why are you walking? And so he's like jogging. I mean, we just went through an intense car wreck, man. You know what I mean? So like he's worn out. And then and I'm like, Jose, you need to call 911. He's like, and he always puts his phone in the door handle, right? He's like, and he's just telling me, he's like, I put my phone in the door handle, but in my mind, I saw the phone slide into his pocket during the car wreck. Like I just had that vision of it sliding. I was like, bro, it's in your right pocket. And he goes, no, it's not. I was like, dude, check. And he puts his hand in his pocket and he pulls it out. He's like, what the heck? He's like, what? I was like, all right, you need to call 911. And then they start arguing about who's going to call 911 and what they're going to say. I was like, dude, just call him, dude. And so they call 911 and Tim McMurphy's doing it. And like none of them really knew where we were. And so they gave him bad directions. And I'm like, tell that F and B word to hurry up. And then he says to her, "Hey, B word, hurry up." And I don't know, it was really funny at the time. And then I'm like, "All right, guys, listen, I'm gonna start blacking out now, and panicking, but I want you guys to know that everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be all right." And then after I said that, boom, it's like I was no longer my spiritual self, is how I perceive it. I was all flesh, and I started panicking. I'm like, I'm gonna die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And I'm carving in the ground my girlfriend's name with a heart. Because I thought I was gonna die. And um, Tyler eventually made it to that house over there, and they had called 911 as well. Um, from what I understand, it took them about an hour to get to us because of the bad directions, and it was really foggy. So they had a hard time finding us, and they eventually found us. Um, when Tyler went over to that house, the lady drove her and Tyler to our location, and they ended up. And I was like, I'm really cold. And this lady had a Raiders blanket that I still have today, and put it over my body. And I started asking her to pray for me. I was like, "Can you please pray for me?" And this lady never prayed before, but she did her best. And then the ambulance arrived, and it was my uncle Doc. Oh, my cousin. I call him Uncle Doc because he's way older than me. Um, it was my cousin, and I could hear his voice. I'm like, "Cuz, you gotta save me, man. You gotta save me." He's like, and he realized who it was. And I was like, "Can you pray for me? Can you please pray for me?" And he's a big Christian man, and he's praying over me, and he's like, "We got you. You're gonna be okay." And they put me on the, stretcher thing or whatever, and put me in the ambulance, and two of my friends go in that car, and they start cutting the clothes off of me. And I'm like totally nude in front of my friends, and my friends are just staring at me, my junk, and I'm like looking at them, covering it with my hands. And the uh, my cousin puts a little towel over me, and so I'm just like totally nude, vulnerable in front of all of them, but I'm just staring at them like, "Don't you say nothing," you know. And we get to the ER, and instantly we get in there. People are hovering all over me like flies on poop, dude. And they're just poking me. They're putting IVs in me, and it hurts, dude. All this hurts, and I'm like freaking out. I'm fighting against them. I'm like, "Get off of me, get off of me," because it was just too much, dude. It was a lot, man. And I think they gave me a shot to calm me down. I don't know, but I just remember being held down, and I'm calling out for my friends, like, "Help me, Tyler, help me. They're hurting me. They're hurting me." And my buddy Tyler comes up to me and is like, "You're hurting him. Leave my friend alone. Leave him alone." And my cousin Doc, Kevin Coleman, called my parents, and they all arrived. And my uncle Larry Booth showed up, and he was a pastor, and they all showed up there, and they're in the room with me. I had a catheter put into me. It was brutal, dude. It sucked. And my family's praying over me, big prayer warriors. And my uncle Larry's like, "Do you?" I remember I could hear him saying, like, "Do you see?" Like, I guess I had a chunk of skin missing back here, and they were saying how they could see it mending back together, like repairing itself. And I just remember hearing that. And they had a life flight me to Portland, and so a helicopter arrived. But as soon as the helicopter arrived, really bad weather happened, and so they couldn't fly out. They had to wait for it to for a clear spot to fly out. So while we're in the helicopter waiting, my mom's in there praying for a clear spot to happen. And then there was an opening in the weather for a minute, and so we were able to fly out. But on our flight, all the way, our helicopter flight from there to Portland, it got really rocky, man. It was scary. I personally, man, I thought we were gonna crash and die. It was so violent, and my mom was a little terrified, but she's praying the whole way, you know. And we finally get to Portland, and uh, I remember seeing this black lady, and just super sweet, just like beautiful black lady. And I'm asking her, "Can I sleep yet?" Because they wouldn't let me sleep. They're like, "Can I sleep yet?" She's like, "You rest all you want, baby, precious," or something like that. Just I'll never forget her because she was the best when I was there. She was such a motherly figure when I was there, and then I when I got I was like, "Thank you," and I went into a coma for 3 days. But the coma, man, was wild, dude. The coma was wild because in this coma, uh, I was in an ocean, and I was drowning, and so when I was drowning deep in the ocean, it was like I was in a heavy sleep, and then I would be fighting to get back up above water, and when I'd hit the top of the water, it was like just a stormy water, and I'm just out there in the ocean by myself, and then I'd get tired and I'd start sinking again, and then I'd fight up, a second time, and I could see some land over there, like palm trees in the land, and then I drowned again, and then I'd fight back up to get above water, and then next I knew it, I was like washed up against the shore, and there was just water just like going on me while I'm on this shoreline. And like I get up, and it felt so real, dude. It felt so real. And I get up and I'm looking around. I'm like, "Hello, is anybody there? Hello." And this coconut falls off this palm tree and like rolls right to me. And I pick it up, and I break it open, and there's coconut juice in it, and I'm drinking it, and I see like this little hot springs over in the corner over there. And so I walk over in the hot springs with my coconuts, and I get in, and it's like perfectly warm, and it's like being in a hot tub, dude. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just sipping on this coconut, and I'm just watching the sky and the sun and the waters, coming ashore. And all of a sudden the sun turns into South Park, right? And then all of a sudden the sun in the sky is South Park. And then all of a sudden I fade out, and like there's a TV in the corner, and it's South Park playing in the hospital. And um there's like I'm like all these things are attached to me, and I'm looking around, and there's a machine, next to me, and like I'm like trying to talk, but there's something in my mouth, and and I reach for it, I'm like, "What the heck is this?" And my mom like freaks out. She's like, don't move, honey." She goes, "Nurse, nurse, he's awake, he's awake." You know, and so they come in, and they pulled a big tube out of my mouth, and it was freaking long, dude. It's just blah, and I couldn't talk because I had all these thorns in my mouth. I'm like, and so they bring me like this little cup of liquid, and you put it in your mouth, and it like dissolved or coated my tongue. I don't know what happened. It felt kind of like bubbly, and then I was able to talk again. And immediately after that, I went into surgery, and that's when they removed the broken bones from my hip, put in a metal plate, and then I was back into my room on a morphine drip, and I was there for quite some time. I damaged my brain to where I lost 3 years of memory. I had to relearn how to walk, talk, and eat properly, because every time I put something to my mouth to drink it, I would go straight to my chest. So it was not right anymore. And I was just so disoriented, and my my bio I ended up meeting my biological mom when I was 14. I found her, and so she called me on the phone, and um, this all happened around the same time, the same year that I met my biological mom. She stayed in Chula Vista, like she told me that she'd never been. Took 5 minutes for them to find her. So, um, but yeah, man. I ended up staying there for quite some time. After I got to go home for a while. I was in a wheelchair for a long time. I had to be at a certain angle, until my hip healed. And then I had to go to a rehabilitation center, and I was there for a long time, to relearn how to walk and all that kind of stuff. And that was really hard because I was still really stubborn. I was trying to walk before I could really walk. I remember being on those things when you're walking, and I had a nurse that was there. I was like, dude, let go of me. I can do this on my own. Let go. I got this. I remember walking, and I got humbled really fast, man, because I face planted and I wouldn't let anybody help get me up. I was like, I can do it on myself. And then eventually, I was like, all right, I can't. And I couldn't wipe my own butt for a long time. I had people that had to do that for me. And so it was humiliating, humbling. It was a heck of a time, man.
Wow. If you like this podcast, then you're going to love this. So every day I get about 6 phone calls from people all over the world sharing powerful supernatural stories. Unfortunately, not all of them make it on the main show. Sometimes because they're just not a good fit or they don't have enough details for a full interview. But these stories still need to be heard. And that's why I started a brand new show called God's Voice Daily. And starting June 7th, 2025, I'll be sharing one of these phone calls every single day. It's a huge commitment, but I'm willing to do it because these stories have deeply impacted my life. And I know they'll impact yours too. Subscribe now at God's Voice Daily Show on YouTube or go to godsvoicedaily.com. And now let's get back to the show. And what an experience, man. Are you planning on writing a book one of these days?
Hey, you know what, man? I've been trying to use ChatGPT, honestly, to help me do this. So
Well,
because
you can upload this transcript after we're finished.
oh, right on,
Now
yeah,
since you have it all in order,
yeah,
and maybe we can help you write it. Wow. I don't even know where to start. There's so many different things. So I was going to ask you about your mom. And by the way, it's like 10:21 p.m. here. So if my Russian is starting to come out, you know what? Usually later in the day, English suffers a little bit. So we're going to jump around a little bit. So many questions, so many follow-up questions. It's interesting that you remember being born. I can't even remember what happened like yesterday.
yeah,
That's cool that you got that. What a beautiful experience that you got to reconnect with your mom. I was going to ask you, but glad that you were able to reconnect. Do you still stay in touch with her now?
yeah. So when I was 14, before the car wreck and all that, it's funny, man. I had a whole list. I actually have some notes right here, and I didn't even look at them once while I was telling this, but I had a list of how I was going to tell everything. But yeah, when I was 14, man, I was going through such an intense time with, after being raped, right? Where I had a lot of hate in my heart. And my mom, and I was hanging out with guys that were no good. And my mom was like, what can we do to keep you from being around those guys? And I was like, if you find my mom, I'll, I'll drop all those guys. I won't hang around them anymore. And so they found my biological mom, and it took the investigator 5 minutes because she never left the Chula Vista area. And, and, uh, and I reconnected with them, and I saw them before I got in my car wreck. I was able to, I think it was around Christmas when my adopted parents went over there to meet my family over there. And man, it was like instant connection, man. I always wanted little brothers and siblings, and I knew they were out there, and I knew like I had a sister and all that, and I had everything, dude. I had sisters, I had 2 beautiful little brothers, and it was so great I mean, I have a great relationship with all my siblings. I mean, we connect every weekend, play Fortnite, I mean, not Fortnite, Call of Duty together. But since I was 14, they've been in my life and I've been in their life. I went and lived with them sometime after my car wreck. When I was 15, I went and lived with them, and I was there for a few years. Um, And then I did my senior year there. Uh, Not my senior year. I did some high school there at Hilltop High over there, and then I started just to really missing my a few of my best friends back home, and so I went back to Pendleton, and then every summer I'd go stay with my mom and them in California. And then as I got older, after college, by the time I was 21, I went to college. Then I lived in Arizona for a long, long period. And yeah, I've had a really great connection with my biological mom. Um, her husband at the time, he passed away last year, but he was like a second dad to me, man. He was everything I needed. He showed me a lot of love and gave me a lot of guidance, and he's a man that I love and I miss,
What
all the
about
time.
your biological father? Have you met him?
Oh man, okay, all right. This one's gonna be hard because I know my family's gonna see this one, and I haven't really shared anything with them
Well,
about it.
if you don't want to talk about it,
No, man, it's
I want to
okay
make sure. You
because
sure?
no,
I don't
yeah,
want to
no,
set
it's
you up.
totally okay, bro. It's totally
Only
okay.
thousands of people are gonna see this, so
Yeah,
you
I don't
know.
care, man. It's this is the truth. I actually found him. They know I met him. They just don't know the extent of everything. So I met him 7 years ago, 7 or 6 years ago, through the DNA thing, the ancestry. Um, I saw somebody that was like a cousin of mine, and so I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, like I see that we're really close in blood." And he's like, "Oh, I noticed that too." And I was like, and we're trying to figure out, because I've always had this goal of finding my biological parents. It's just been something that I wanted to know who I was, because for people that are adopted, man, when we look in the mirror, we don't see anybody, right? You don't see your parents. You don't see any of your relatives. Like it's you don't see any connection to anybody. And so when I found my biological family and my mom and everything, I saw half of myself, but there was still part of me that I didn't recognize. And so when I got in touch with this cousin and got in touch with this guy, I reached out to him like, "Hey, I'm your son." He's like, "How?" And he knew exactly who my mom was. And so we connected there, and at first, man, it was really good, dude. Like, it was really good. Like, I was like, "Dude, this guy's cool." But then he was a piece of trash, man. He was abusive to his wife at the time, like physically and verbally. Um, and I kept giving him chances, man, because I don't know, I'm just that kind of guy. I wanted more answers. I wanted to know about how I came to be and how he knew my mom, and he knew quite a bit about my mom and about the family, so I knew he knew who she was, you know what I mean? Um, and so you know, 3 years ago, I kind of dropped him, because I didn't like the kind of person he was. It would cause me a lot of heartache. I remember one time he was being a huge D, right? And I told him that. I'm like, "Dude, you're a huge D." And after I said that, like, we disconnected, we didn't talk. And there were things, spiritual things that, like, here's an example, dude. When I was a young man, when I was 14, I was raped. When he was 14, he was raped. Went through the whole same thing too. At McDonald's at knife point. Um, he had some other experiences in life like I did, you know, and it was just weird and how bizarre, similar. It was like he was a clone of me, dude. And it was really weird that, like, how does our lives match up so similarly? Like, we'd have that discussion, like, how? And so one day he hits me up. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be coming through Oregon. Can I come and see you?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man. I don't know. I got to think about this." And so I talked to my dad, my adopted dad next door, and I was like, "Hey, this guy wants to come and see me." And he's like, "Well, you should do it." I was like, "What?" He's like, "What's stopping you from seeing him?" I was like, "Honestly, my family back in California, you know, I don't want I don't want them to feel weird about it, and I don't know how I feel about this guy." And he's like, well, if I were you, I'd do it because I'd want answers. And it's like, and plus, it'd be kind of cool for me to meet him too, because I'm curious too, you know. And I was like, you know, he's just such a my not my bio, but my adopted dad. He is just such an amazing man, dude. He's so supportive, so loving, and so I took his advice, and I was like, okay, you know, you can come visit us. And so he came and visited us, and the first day was surreal. It was weird. You know what I mean? Like before all those days, the first time we interacted and met, dude, was on Call of Duty. I mean, not Call of Duty, but GTA, Grand Theft Auto, the online version. So I met him in virtual reality with his character, and and he met me in my virtual reality character. So for the first like 3 4 years, that's how we interacted was like through GTA and Red Dead Redemption through those online multiplayers. And it was cool to have that kind of connection with somebody. But like I said, there was a lot of things that were messed up, man. Like I said, with the abuse and certain things he'd say about his family and stuff like that. I couldn't get behind, man. And so when he came down here, I was cautious. I probably should have just had him meet me somewhere else and not at my home. But he came and stayed at my home for a little while. And the first night was great, and he was giving me stories about his life and about his parents. Um, and then I started realizing like certain stories didn't match up. You know, he said, you know, he had lost his virginity to my mom and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden he's telling me this other story and said he lost his virginity there. And then I was like, wait a second, you know, like, wait a second. I thought you said this, you know? And when that happened, I it didn't feel right with me, man. You know what I mean? There was some dishonest there. And so the next day, um, they went out of town, went into town to get something, and I got Snoopy through his luggage, and I saw a gun in his suitcase, and I was a little upset that he didn't inform me that he had a gun in his bag, and um, it wasn't a 9 millimeter or anything like that. It was literally a BB gun, but he ended up later showing me his gun and trying to make it off like it was a real, you know, weapon and all this kind of stuff. But it was just too much weird stuff, man. His kid was really into weird things. Um, I remember my kids were upstairs and they were watching this animated thing, and it was like little two girls kissing in it, and I was really upset about that because, you know, I'm a Christian family, and I'm really protective of what they watch. And then she's a what do you call it? You know, those people that think they're animals. A furry. She's a furry, and no hate to whatever your thing is, but yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea, man. You know.
Now, what about your real parents? How are you?
You mean my adopted
Everybody's,
parents?
or I'm sorry, not real parents. Yeah, you're. See, there's
Yeah.
the after 10 o'clock kicking in.
No, you're good, man. It's confusing. I get it all the time.
Yeah. What about? It sounds like your parents were in the ministry, some kind of mission, right?
Yeah,
From the
yeah,
get go,
yeah,
or
yeah.
your adopted parents, and
Yeah.
they're still in that, or
I mean, they're really old now, man. They're like my mother's going through Alzheimer's now,
oh
but
wow.
she's, you know, God's really helped her out through that. We went a couple months ago. We went through a really intense time with it, where she was making up stories in her head, getting physically violent with me and my dad. And then there'd be moments where only I could get through to her. She said I was her anchor, you know, and that's how much she loves me. You know what I mean? That I'm seen as her anchor. And I would be able to talk her through these things and talk her down and kind of bring her back to reality. And she was talking with God about all this because she was crying out to God to heal her. And she came to my door one day and she's like, God revealed to me my condition. And you need to tell your dad that I love him, you know, and I'll do whatever it takes to get better. If he needs to send me off somewhere, you know, I'll go somewhere, you know, but your dad needs to know I love him, you know. And then the next day, she came home and I mean came to my house and said that God revealed another thing to her. And since that day, since those 2 days, man, my mom, she still has Alzheimer's, man, but she's a happy old timer. You know what I mean? It's not this. you're trying to steal my money and verbally hateful and all, because it was torturous for months, man. It was really bad. And but it's great now with all that.
Yeah, it's hard to watch your parents suffer the
Yeah.
older they grow, definitely. Another thing I wanted to ask you, when you saw that angel, you said
Yeah.
that it might have been Gabriel. Well, he was walking to you with a like a notebook, right? Or a book or
It was
something,
a
right?
big book. Yeah. And
What was that all about? Was it
yeah,
your
man.
book of life?
Yeah, I think so because in like I said, man, there's like patches where I forget. It's cloudy, man. But I do remember there was a point when we opened up the book and I was searching through it. And I don't know if I was searching for my name or whatnot. That's why I didn't bring it up because I'm not vivid on what that was, but I think it was the book of life. Uh I'm a Christian as far as I believe that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, right? Um I'm not well educated in the Bible. I don't go to church anymore since I was a kid. That's something that I'm working on. My wife goes to this really great church. The pastor is actually a friend of mine that I've known when I was a little kid, and we actually did mission field trips where we built houses in Mexico. So it's pretty cool to see him as a pastor now. I actually went to a church function and he was out there with his arms wide open, like Pat, and it makes me feel welcoming. I'm kind of an introvert, man. I get nervous around a lot of people. That's why this right
Really? I
here,
would have
yeah,
never.
yeah, doing this, man, and meeting you, it's like a big thing for me, dude. Like I know a lot of people are gonna see this. I saw some of your views had like over 600,000 views. You know what I mean? So I know a lot of people are gonna see this, but yeah, man, I'm pretty of a bashful guy. So
Well, something else back to your story about when you were a young kid and you, I don't know how old, I think you said like 7, maybe younger.
mhm.
You said that you prayed, you said that I know I will grow away. Don't let me get too far.
Yeah,
That's wow. It's interesting. I remember it kind of reminded me of a story one time I heard, I think from my parents. I've heard so many stories. Now it's like a blur. I can't figure out, can't
yeah,
remember who told me what story, but the story was this, that this guy, I think so it was like he was about to go to war, World War II. And I think it was like even like a medic. And he
mm,
prayed to God. He said, I do not want to see any blood during the war. And he went through the whole war and he did not see blood.
wow,
And, and it was like that prayer that he just asked. And it kind of reminds me, that passage in the Bible talks about you don't have because you don't ask.
yeah,
And how important it is to ask. But it's interesting that you prayed that prayer. And I prayed similar prayers when I was, first turned on to the Lord, where just whatever it takes, keep me in the faith.
yeah,
And I meant it. I think those prayers that you pray in private when nobody's watching.
yeah,
And it's interesting because after talking to you that one day, and because we had a brief conversation, I called you. I think it was like first thing in the morning. You just woke up because I'm
yeah.
3 hours
It's like
ahead of
9
you.
a.m. for me.
Yeah, and you like slept like 1 hour maybe that
Yeah,
day. And I remember you were struggling a little bit, but you
yeah,
shared that story. And that night, my 9-year-old, I was putting him to sleep, and he was we were talking about faith, and he's like, "How do you know this and that?" And I shared that story with him. I was like, "Look, just if you're concerned about certain things about um, faith and things of that nature, just be real and transparent with God."
yeah.
And so that encouraged him. He smiled. And he's like, "Okay, I'm ready to go to sleep now," and he went to bed.
Oh, that's
But
beautiful, man.
that's why I think testimonies are powerful. When people hear testimonies like yours, like you said, hey, you haven't arrived. You're still on your journey. You're still figuring out.
Yeah,
You're still going through stuff. And that's what I love about every testimony. You can hear God's voice in every single one of them. They're all
yeah.
different. Your experience when the angel took you to your mom's room and you saw her prayer being
Oh
answered
yeah,
and your prayer being answered. And even in the thick of it, when you were experiencing, that room, the stuff that you were experiencing, God was still, intervening on your behalf. So it's powerful. God is always, he's in the middle of all of this. And I know at times it feels like he's so far away, but he's not. But those witches, man, the whole time I remember thinking like, my gosh, how evil can you be?
dude.
Um, that's crazy, the stuff that they were doing. And I just remember thinking, man, where are they today? Like, I
Yeah,
wonder what.
I often think that too, man. I often think that too. I hope that they're saved, man. I hope that God revealed themselves to those little girls, man. I know that.
It's a generational stuff, you know, to probably pass it on. But it's interesting what you experienced, the whole fire experience that you saw a silhouette of a man.
Yeah,
Do you ever wonder, like, was it just something that
I made up in my
like your
head.
brain? Yeah, because
Yeah, all the time.
the older I grow, sometimes even like for example, I just like you when you were explaining the economic collapse when you were there and currency being pretty much nothing. I've experienced similar things in Ukraine, USSR,
Yeah.
and you know, I moved to the United States in the middle of the night. We had mafia threats. They wanted to kidnap one of the kids. They found out that we were moving to the United States, that we sold our apartment, that we had some money on us. And so we
Wow.
had to hire bodyguards in the middle of the night, fifth floor Soviet apartment, one by one. They had to take us to the bus. We had a car in front of us taking us to the airport. I mean, it was intense. It was scary. Just going through the dark Soviet apartment staircase. Sometimes there would be drunks there in the middle of the night. You know, so it was intense. But now looking back, you know, I remember going through the streets of Kiev and I remember thinking, this is the last time I'll ever see this place. And it was the last time. But
Yeah.
now when I look back to those moments, it feels like it didn't even happen. It feels like it was just all just a dream, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it's important when things like that happen, like everything that you just described, how important it
Yeah.
is to write it down and to remember that this did happen. It's because your mind will play tricks.
Yeah, that's something that I often look back on certain things, and you can like now when you're older, you can make sense of the things that you saw, or you can kind of interpret, oh, that wasn't real and all that, right? But I know without a doubt what I saw with that man in the center of that fire. I know that was real. Um, there's no way. I mean, dude, when I was a little kid growing up in Peru, dude, I didn't have toys. I didn't have um distractions. So that's why I was so mature. I was actually talking to my parents about that and my wife. I was like, dude, it's crazy that all that happened between, being 1.5 years old and then moving back just a week or two before I turned 6. So that all happened at a young age, man. And it's crazy.
And you're seeing the murder at the young age happening in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
That will change you.
It's just crazy I was so young because I look at my kids today, man, and I'm like, dude, what a crazy life they have because they seem so young and immature. Like I have a 14-year-old, a 9-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old,
Wow. Okay.
and
A lot of kids.
all girls.
You're outnumbered.
And I'm very outnumbered, very outnumbered. I look at them and I'm like, you know, they have a problem communicating and, you know, processing things, thoughts and all that. And I'm just like, dude, how was I able to think like I was a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old? I had such a smart mind. And, I was talking to my brother yesterday and he was just talking about how our family just is really good critical thinkers. My brother, my mom, and we always impress each other with our mental, capacity of things. You
Yeah,
know what I
you can
mean?
remember things from again, you're from the birth. That's amazing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you know, when you go through those kinds of things, you're seeing death. You know, I grew up in the '90s in the Soviet Union, Perestroika. I remember, I'll never forget this. I was a young kid too. I was like 7 years old, maybe even younger. And there was an unfortunate thing happened. This girl jumped from a building, took her own life, and
Wow.
I'll never forget that she left the shoes on top of the building for her sister. She didn't want to ruin them. But I
Wow.
remember walking, just looking at her at the bottom, and I was a young kid, like, and there flies flying around her, and here everything is so sheltered. You don't see death very
Oh yeah.
often. There, like, I remember a guy getting hit by a car and just like his body, just people drowning. Death was always around us. Like I saw it all the time. Multiple people jumping from for some reason jumping from buildings is like the number one thing for people to go, hanging themselves and all these different things. But when I moved to the United States, you're so sheltered. When there's a car accident, and it's fatal. Things get cleaned up quickly. You don't even see. In
Yeah.
Ukraine, I remember they would just put a tarp over you or something, and you see it, and it's around you. It definitely, you never get used to it, but it definitely does something to you. You mature pretty quickly. You see how important and fragile life is.
Yeah.
And so when you were describing your situation, I've had similar experiences, but yeah, and it's hard to imagine. Like I have a 12-year-old and 9-year-old. It's hard to imagine that they would. I can't even begin
Yeah.
to think that for them to even experience something like that, it would destroy. It would hurt. Oh, man,
Yeah.
they would have to go to a therapist for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was no therapy for us, man,
No,
in
no
those ages.
therapy.
Much different. The world was
Well,
so different back then.
I gotta ask about the abuser, the guy. Where is he
Yeah.
today?
He died of natural causes. I actually planned on taking care of him myself when I was 17. I actually planned on um, you know, getting my hands dirty. But God put a girl in my life named Lori Nerschel who really stopped me from doing it. I had a plan of burning the house down with him and me in it. Because, you know, even though God revealed and did a lot of things, I mean, I'm still human and I still struggle with things. Even today, man, I still struggle with things, not as much as I used to, but, I think we all struggle with things.
Another thing, there was a guy there at the end with you by
Yeah.
the gate. Who was that?
Dude, that's something I've been trying to understand because in the Bible there's two men, I think, right? I mean, you're well educated in the Bible, correct?
Um, Maybe.
Maybe, okay.
There's always somebody who's better.
Yeah. So I know that there were men that went to heaven in their earthly bodies, right? And so and I wish I was educated enough to say who that was, but that's the only assumption that I ever came to. If you ever seen Passions of the Christ, there's this one guy who rips his shirt when God says something blasphemous, like Jesus says something blasphemous, he rips his shirt. That was the kind of get up that he was wearing. Those people that were trying to crucify Jesus. It was the same kind of almost outfit, not identical, but similar, you know. And so I'm always very curious. I mean, there's still questions, man. That's why I love watching your channel because I mean, I see similarities in some of the things that people talk about, and then I also see a way different things. You know what I mean? And so it's just cool to hear other people's out of body experiences and life moments because it makes you not feel alone and not feel crazy. You know?
Well, and every journey is so different, but yet the same. It's like
Yeah.
the experience. It's like it has the same trajectory, but it just looks different. It's kind of like different flavor of ice cream, so to speak, but it's still part of the same ice cream shop, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of how it is. I am curious. In closing, I'm curious to find out if you still stay in touch with all the buddies in that car,
Uh,
all your friends.
all of them, but I mean, no, only one, and it's Tyler Diaz. He's been my friend since third grade, and he's the only buddy I got out of them all. And he was the one that I would have died for, and I'd die for again. You know, but yeah, him and me, we still keep in touch. I mean, he lives um, in another place in Oregon, and I don't see him often, but we talk on the phone every time here and there. We'll talk crypto and all that kind of stuff. He's my little crypto buddy. And but yeah, we're close friends, man. And I love him and I love his parents. Um, but yeah, we're really close. The other guys, Victor, um, you know, I came across him a few times in my early 20s, and he was a little gangster leader kind of guy, right? He would, in my opinion, he manipulated young little Mexican kids into into being little gangsters. He was like a drug guy, and back when I was a drug guy selling, he set me up, and I went to his house and I was surrounded by all these like young little kids blocking the door and he wanted me to rejoin the family. And I was like, man, that ain't me. I ain't about that life no more. So
Speaking of manipulation, that the experience that you had fighting with the guy in the hoodie
yeah.
when you were up there, who was that? Was it Satan?
You know, I think so. He never introduced himself. You know what I mean? It was just you mean that's who I think it was. I mean, personally, that's who I think it was. I believe he was a fallen angel at least, because I mean, the angel that I spoke to, they looked the same. I mean, not face features were different, but like white skin, no hair, you know. The only difference is when the angel of light in the white robe, when he spoke to me verbally like this. But when the other one spoke to me, he spoke to me telepathically, like intrusive, you know.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I think that's the enemy, man. I think,
What do you, something else you said that's kind of I wanted to follow up on. You were talking about how you saw Jesus, right? But you felt like you wanted to earn the ability to look at Jesus.
yeah,
What do you
man.
mean by that?
I don't know, man. I don't, I don't know, man. I want to see him when I get there. You know what I mean? Like when I pass on and I accomplish getting to heaven. You know, I want that to be my reward. You know what I mean? Like it's I feel like it's a privilege to see Jesus. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Man, I had a face-to-face encounter with Jesus and changed my life, man, 9 years ago. And he told me about this podcast. He told me it was going to happen. And it's crazy as I'm sitting here thinking about everything that happened. Dude, it happened. Everything he said came to pass. Yeah, 9 years later,
Yeah.
uh, but it happened in his own timing. And how Jesus into the smallest details, how he'll you're still on your path, you're still walking it out, you're still working on some things. There's some things that not perfect. All of
Yeah.
us are, but the fact that he's so patient, he's with us, he's walking through. Like that's what I love about your story, is that how he was in all of that.
Yeah.
It feels like you're just alone, like going by yourself, but he's in all of that.
Yeah.
And anyway, speaking of reward, I got a dinner waiting for me after this interview. I'm so excited about it. But listen, man, I know during the interview you said your mom called you Patrick. People are probably confused. Is it Ian or is it Patrick? It's both, guys.
Yeah,
it's both.
it's Patrick, Ian Patrick, Ethan
Yeah.
Cosmos, my gamer tag and all that. Um, no, yeah, man. I when I lived here in Pendleton, man, I live in a small town, man, and so I like when I went through that abuse, I became very violent. Um, I was dealing, you know what I mean, and like people don't let you move away from that. You know, it's like you were a scumbag, and that name kind of just attaches to that identity of who I was, you know? And so when uh in 2005 is when I graduated, and in 2007 I went to college, and I just wanted to start over, man. There was I went to the Art Institute of Portland, and there was a well-known artist named Patrick Smith, you know, and I had dreams of making an animated series based off of my life and the stories I'm telling you, and just this whole idea, you know, and so I just wanted to go fresh and clean, and my middle name is Ian, so I went with that, and I've introduced myself since then as Ian. But yeah, I mean, everybody they call me Patrick, you know, Ian, Pitter Patter, you know, whatever people know me as, I
You have
don't
many
care.
names.
Yeah,
Many
many
names.
names, man, many names.
Well, it's 10:56 p.m. before my English completely gives out. Start speaking Russian with you. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being vulnerable, for
Yeah,
sharing your
man.
journey with us. Appreciate it so much, and we'll stay in touch, man.
Yeah, I hope so, man. It was a pleasure talking with you, and this was awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. I have another video I want you to see. Up next, my friend Robin Cunningham left his body and he saw heaven, hell, and even Judgment Day. And guess what? It's closer than you think. That video should be coming up on the screen right now. If you don't see it on the screen, check the description below for the link. Until next time, have a great rest of the day, and I look forward to serving you and getting to know you more inside of our free private community over at family.godsvoicetoday.com. Talk soon. Bye-bye.